YouTube channel as we welcome these two individuals in the studio with us. Mitch Foster, the city manager of Ludington, joining us this morning. Good morning to you, sir. Thanks for coming in.
Oh, thanks, Chris.
All right. And the mayor of Ludington, Mark Barnett. How you doing, sir?
Good. How are you?
All right. I'm doing okay.
Good.
Let's talk about some things. Might as well just start right out of the gate, the Deer Cull. So I'm telling you, originally I thought, okay, it's going to go away, and then, but you still see this, and it's a herd of deer that just roam the Ludington area. But you know, I say this. Let me start here. Is that we are not alone. I think I brought this story up to you the other day. That there was a proposal on a city council meeting in Texas that they wanted to take a helicopter and a rifle and hunt their deer that they're having as an issue from the air. I don't think that's going to happen here, I would assume, right?
No. I mean, as of right now, so the plan is the plan that has been discussed so far at Public Safety is to work with the U.S. Department of Agriculture, Wildlife Services Division again, like we had started to last year, and to conduct a removal program. Essentially using rifles, suppressors for the ends of those. As well as night vision and thermal imaging in very specific locations where we know there's the significant population of deer.
And what is the issue? I mean, I understand they could be issue, which is somebody's driving down the road, darts across the road, you have an accident, right? I mean, we know that that's part of it. But then you hear some of the chatter out there about vegetation being eaten up and such. But other than, and I know they're both serious, okay, but other than those two, what is the core issue that you're hearing from the public?
I think it depends on the person, and I think that was probably evident at the public safety meeting when this was discussed again. Obviously the vegetation issue came up. There are concerns about vehicular accidents between deer and humans, but we're also starting to see reports of coyotes within the city limits or just right around the city limits. And we're also having a number of encounters between humans or their pets and deer increase here over the last couple of years. And so I think, again, depends on your perspective, but each one of those has been referenced.
All right. Mr. Mayor, why did this die off the first time? Was it not enough support? Was it that the city council said, hey, let's maybe revisit it in the future? What happened there so we can remind the listeners and viewers? And I hate for you to predict the future, but it's come up within a 12-month period of time, or maybe 6 to 8 months period of time. That says that maybe it'll go through this time. Is that fair to say?
Well, I think it's fair to say that it might go through this time. I think in terms of, I can't speak with any degree of authority relative to the last go round, other than to say that this go round, I think what's being envisioned is it'll be strictly the city of Ludington and the Ludington City Council, as opposed to the school board and other items that were raised then. So I think right now it's a matter of the council, the city of Ludington City Council, deciding whether or not the public safety issue, as well as the public other concerns that you've enumerated, are significant enough to warrant a deer management. And again, I mean, we've equated, I think in some people's minds, we've equated the word cull with obliteration or elimination, and that's just not the case. It is a case where there's a certain population or density of deer and density of humans that sometimes are counterproductive. They don't live well together, and so for a lot of different reasons, I think we need to manage the herd that's in the city.
And remind me, was it passed last time, but just never executed, or not?
So it started. They had started baiting, putting up trail cameras, those sorts of things, and then there was a potential lawsuit that had been brought forward. And I think at that point in time, council made the decision to withdraw. And as the mayor talked about, one of the big issues was the school property and going outside the city limits because that school forest property is in PM Township. And so part of the goal this time around, I know the mayor's been working with some staff members to identify some additional sites. So we're looking at very specifically within the city of Ludington, and staying away from any what I would refer to as controversial property.
All right. So how does this look? How does this look when if the DNR would be doing this, taking these deer down? Are they killing them? Are they just tranquilizing them? Is it going to be in somebody's yard? What does this look like?
Well, I think in terms of the method of management is it's going to be the deer will be shot and they'll be field dressed. They'll be taken out to a local vendor and butchered, and that meat will be supplied at least the way it was before, and I'm assuming the same way this time, is that it would be supplied to Lakeshore Food Club, and that meat will go towards helping families that need help. They need help putting food on the table. So this is not just a matter of just doing it and indiscriminately and then disposing of them. It's a matter of using that managed resource to help folks.
All right. Where do you think people are landing on this side of this conversation this time? Thoughts?
It's a deer program. When you talk to my colleagues across the state, whether it's Farmington Hills, Meridian Township, East Lansing, Grand Rapids, Manistee, whenever the first year happens, there's a lot of pushback because it's an unknown. How the program works, the impact on the community, all of those sorts of questions are concerning to people, and I understand that. And so I think there's a lot of that. If it moves forward and council does decide to do this, then as a staff member, we will figure out how to do it properly. The USDA, this is what they do. The Wildlife Services Division, they have an entire division that goes around to state forests, state parks, municipalities, airports, and this is all they do. They are trained sharpshooters to remove animals that are deemed to be invasive by any of those agencies or entities. And so, part of that is working with them to make sure it's done safely. Two questions come to mind. Cost, is that budgeted right up front, or is it per deer? Is it the length of the contract or the agreement? What is that like? Would be my first question. Let's start there. Yeah, so we're looking at just about 18.5 per year for the removal. It is not per deer. It's based on effort. So if they are up here for, within that number, I think it says, it's 4 or 5 nights of removal program. They might have night one where they remove 40. And then that's what our last permit was for. And so if all of a sudden we need, they think that they can get more, then we would have to call up the DNR and ask for more. But we wouldn't be charged more from the U.S. Department of Agriculture. But they could also just get 2 and only see 2. So it's truly based on effort.
Okay. Will you be soliciting the community to help them or help you find those deer? Say, hey, we got when they're actively looking for them. Do you think that's going to be a part of this conversation?
No. So it would be that would occur ahead of time. Okay. So if council does decide this evening to push forward with the deer removal program, that if someone knows that, hey, I've got a herd of them that come through every night, then that might be something when we have the USDA come on site for a site visit, that we take a look at those areas or maybe adjacent woods near those areas as part of the removal program. But in general, our goal is to try to get large tracts of land. Obviously, the city is not really a large tract of land in general, but as large as we can to provide some of that safety netting.
All right, a couple questions come up, and I'm glad you're addressing them, and we appreciate you doing that. You talked about the lawsuit before, the potential lawsuit before. Have we cleared the way that that's not going to, or potentially not going to arise this time?
I can never guess when a lawsuit's going to come forward. Local units of government, because of all the things we do, are pretty easy to just be sued. And so our goal is to make sure that, if we perform a good service that is wanted by a number of residents within the community, and go from there.
All right, but you're avoiding not avoiding here in the conversation, but
no.
Avoiding the whatever happened last time.
Yes,
to avoid
absolutely. That's one of the items is that school forest property.
Okay.
We wanted to avoid that, as well as the use of ARPA funds outside the city of Ludington. So I think we've done that in both areas.
All right, fair to say that. Anything, Mr. Mayor, that the community should know about this topic that to help prepare them, to help them understand why it's being approached again, why I would assume you're on the side of moving it forward. I know, you're in the middle, you are a casting vote there if there's a tie, but where do you stand on this, and what can we tell the community to wrap up this particular part of the subject?
I think the city expects its council, its government, its manager to manage things of the city, and I'm not a deer hunter, but I think, and we're not talking about deer hunting, we're talking about managing the herd that's within the city of Ludington. I think we've heard a different type of herd. We've heard different issues regarding interaction, human and pet interaction with deer, and creating a public safety issue. It's not just a matter of the number of car deer accidents. Frankly, it's been my observation, because we have a herd that routinely is around our house, as do most people, where these deer are walking up to a street and they're looking both ways. If we could teach our children as effectively as these deer have learned to look both ways, we'd be in great shape. It's just incredible. And so these deer have become, in my estimation, cityfied. And so the rule or the standard by which we measure the problem is not measured in car deer accidents anymore. It's human deer interactions and other types of things. So yes, I am in favor of it.
Okay. Let me play devil's advocate here for a moment. Just for a moment here have we encouraged the citizens of Ludington that have had vegetation eaten to protect? I mean, because it's not just deer, it's could be rabbits, could be any other animal there. Is that part of the conversation? Again, wildlife is wildlife, and we kind of cohabitate, right?
Oh yeah.
So what's the message there, I guess?
Yeah. So the city council has approved previously an ordinance to prevent the feeding of animals like that. Deer in particular. There was a little controversy about the height of bird feeders, but we got that taken care of. But in general, trying to really push out there, hey, don't plant these things. The deer will love them. Don't purposely feed deer or raccoons or skunks or any other creature that's in your backyard, because you're probably attracting other creatures. And so that was part of this before city council decided to take it upon themselves to reinitiate this process.
All right. Action tonight is what, a reading, or actually could city council vote on this and then it's underway? What's the next step?
So we have an existing contract with the U.S. Department of Agriculture for the cull from last year, the removal program from last year. And so really tonight is city council saying yes or no as to moving forward with the deer removal program. And we will as staff, we will work with the USDA to try to make that come to fruition. And we've got to get on. They've got a list of communities that are looking to do this every year. And so the sooner we can tell them yes, the sooner they can get us in for right after the new year. That also gives me time and staff time to contact with Sanders Meats to make sure they can keep their processing facility open a little bit later to process the deer as they typically clean up, shut down, switch over. So we need to there's a lot of logistics that have to go into a program like this.
All right. Looking forward to what that conversation is like tonight. City Council meeting at 6 p.m., by the way. Public welcome to come there and voice their opinions and thoughts. But it sounds like you've gotten a lot over that period of time, and now it's just readdressing it because it tends to be. I mean, I passed the softball fields, and you had every deer out there on a base, and it looked like they were playing. But it's shocking when you do drive down a city street and they're just full right in somebody's yard there. So it's very interesting. If you are just joining us, we're talking with the mayor of Ludington, Mark Barnett, and city manager Mitch Foster this morning. City update, city council meeting tonight. The police chief, Chris Jones, he plans on requesting some items as part of his report. They include portable radios. Is this any different than what they have now, or is it technology is getting old? Mr. Mayor, I'll let you take this as your former police chief as well.
Yeah, I know there's characteristics of the radios that they're currently using, which are really back from the time that I was involved with the police department, there's technology that's in terms of securing communications and in terms of being able to program and those types of things. So the radios that they're looking to purchase will make all of that possible.
All right. Including the conversation has come up to do some encryption in regards to that communication. Is that kind of this step? Is that where they would like to move? We see a lot more Facebook groups popping up. I mean, you can look at almost any community across the state and even some of the country and see the scanner page and such. That has become an issue, especially in an active scene that's happening there. Is this part of that momentum there?
Yes, yeah. And so this is part of that. Obviously, we have existing radios that still have to be encrypted on both PD as well as the fire department, and figuring out kind of whose role, or I should say, who gets access to what channels. But this is all being, kind of led by the 911 board. So those folks do a really good job of kind of helping everybody through this. And I know the county is on board with this too. So slow but surely we will get to that point.
All right. Cost-wise, what's that proposed look like?
Oh, man, you got me on a number I don't have in my head right now.
Okay.
I think it's close to the $16,000 number.
All right. And that will cover all of the officers' vehicles, or just, is that, when they say portable radio, is it truly a handheld or?
Yeah, it's truly their portable radios.
Okay.
Yep, not the in-cars.
All right. The K-9, while we're on the police subject, K-9, they got about a $2,000 check that was delivered to them from local retailers, giving a percentage of their shopping. And over the past couple of weekends, I was hoping that number was a little bit larger. We need, obviously, more people to go shopping here in the area. But it still contributed to the $80,000 as their goal there. What's the latest update, momentum-wise? Any conversations, Mr. Mayor? There was the meeting that happened last week where they discussed the K-9. Any sort of updates that you want to share with the community here?
I just think that Chief Jones, along with Sergeant Haveman and Brian Sanders, Officer Sanders, are doing a really good job of putting down the justification for it and giving that to folks for them to understand. I can tell you just from personal experience that K-9s are an irreplaceable tool in certain situations. There's benefits to having them, and Mason County Sheriff's Office has had a K-9 program with one deputy and one K-9 for a period of time, and then the backup resource has been the state police, and they're many times 2-3 hours away. So if the K-9 for Mason County is off and the state police is a ways away, we don't have that resource available to us, and so I think Chief Jones rightfully so is pursuing an opportunity. He's taking a little bit different tact on it relative to funding, and I think it's a smart move, and I think that people in supporting that thing, I think they'll be doing a good thing.
Let's talk about that, if you don't mind. It's establishing a nonprofit to raise the funds for this, so the K-9 will come under the nonprofit, but still be an officer of the Ludington Police Department. Mm-hmm. Do you mind kind of telling us how that works, if you don't mind, for a moment?
Yeah, so at least the format that we're looking at is to have it be where this nonprofit would raise the funds, and then would be able to essentially write a check to the police department or to the city's general fund as expenses arose. This essentially allows for people to say, I am passionate about dogs, about canines, about the police department, and I want to support them directly, to be able to support this nonprofit and then be able to contribute over as expenses arise. Because canines, as the Mason County Sheriff's Department knows, they are not cheap. And there are a lot of additional expenses, trainings, all those sorts of things that occur with them. And Chief Jones, when he was in Newark, Delaware, this was how essentially they did it. He, along with a couple other officers, worked with one business downtown who started up a race to start fundraising for their dog that they eventually got over there. And so I think this is kind of building upon that idea that he started there.
All right, and in $80,000, that's a huge mark, mm-hmm. and it's definitely something that's going to come overnight. I mean, mm-hmm. it does take a bit of time, but how? I guess my question is, in the conversations that either one of you have had, how do you keep that momentum going when it's 6 months or 8 months or maybe even a year into that? How do you keep that going?
So I will tell you that Sergeant Haveman in particular has been talking to me about this since before Chief Kozel. So he is going to, I think him and Officer Sanders alone will keep this momentum going. They will continue to schedule meetings. They will continue to talk to folks like you, Chris, Dave Bostic over the Ludington Daily News, Rob Alloway at the Mason County Press, continue to keep it out there so that people understand the value. And I think working with the Sheriff's Department to say, all right, here's what the Sheriff's Department is doing right now. And here's how, as the mayor talked about, here's how, all right, in these circumstances, the state police have to come up. We need or could utilize an additional dog in this area, especially for some of these other areas that maybe their dog doesn't participate in. I think there's ways that we can keep that momentum and that conversation rolling along.
All right. Any thoughts on that?
I just think that it's a need. It's a tool that is needed here locally. I think it's needed to work in conjunction with the sheriff's department and with state police to provide that resource if and when people call with a problem. I think it's a good way to go, and I think that the way that they're looking to fund this, I think it's exactly right on target. So,
all right, sounds good. We'll continue to keep track and support them along the way. The invasive species. When City Council Council Member Winchesky was here, Kathy Winchesky, we were, and actually I ran into somebody over the weekend, which talked about that segment. I was at El Rancho having dinner, and a gentleman came over named Matt. He said, "Hey, I live in Elkhart, Indiana. I watch these segments, listen to the station there, streaming, obviously. Appreciate him. From Ludington, him and his family, and he brought up the invasive species topic. Well, that conversation is continuing. I mean, you're kind of shocked when you see the difference between what is natural vegetation that is safe and those elements that you want to try to get rid of. Kathy, Councilmember Winchesky has led this along with others. But there is another step that could be in place, and that is taking a survey of the invasive species. And I believe, if I'm right, that is really almost going door to door or getting that conversation started with the public, giving and providing that input. How does that work? Is that something that could make this a game changer? Oh,
absolutely. So the SISMA, Northern Michigan SISMA, which is essentially the group that looks at invasive species management, they have put a proposal together for $2,555 to essentially drive every road, alley, street, boulevard in the city of Ludington and survey what they can see. So they will look at every property possible, every alley, every backyard, every front yard, as much as they can see, and identify where we have invasive species, and even identify where we've got massive infestations and those sorts of things. If you look at the packet, you'll actually see a couple of photos from some properties within the city of Ludington that are just in rough shape because of Oriental bittersweet or Japanese knotweed or tree of heaven. Those are the three that we're really trying to keep an eye on, but as a part of this, they're going to look at others as well. And so that'll give us a huge leg up as we start to look at, all right, how do we abate these items and these plants moving forward?
How does that work in regards to, are they going to be able to go into people's backyards, obviously with permission, stuff like that? What does that process look like?
So that's really going to depend on where City Council wants to take this. Okay. So we have a ordinance that was presented to the Public Safety Committee that was looking at treating it very similar to how we treat sidewalks right now, which is a volunteer program unless it is affecting the neighbors. So then if it's like a code enforcement issue, then it would be almost billed back to the property owner. But that would have to be an extreme case where the invasive on your property is now affecting your neighbor's property. And so council's got to kind of weigh through what's the priority, where the values are, in order to determine, all right, here are the next steps for kind of the abatement process.
All right, so let me backtrack just a second. More of that question was, when they do the surveying, are they going to be able to have access to the backyard of somebody's, gated backyard and stuff like that?
No, not as of right now. The goal, because I think if you include alleys, I think we're about 89 miles worth of streets within the city of Ludington. And so that's just a lot of time in general. One of the things that we've already started seeing happening, and I think the mayor has participated in this, is they've actually invited Councilor Winchesky over to their house to take a look at what they've got. I did that with Councilor Winchesky because my neighboring property had a bunch of Oriental bittersweet on it, and I worked with the property owner to have that abated through SISMA. And so I think if we identify this, we might be able to put a map out there or contact these properties directly and say, hey, contact SISMA if you're willing or interested in participating in an abatement program.
All right. And if you're just joining us, we're talking with the city manager, Mitch Foster, Mayor Mark Barnett. So you hinted on something that isn't known as of yet, and that is, will there be a cost to the homeowner, to property owner, or will the city consume that? Where does that? Where do you think that should stand? I hate to put you on the spot, but we talk about our backyards. Some of this stuff has been probably there. It has before you even purchased the home. Who gets responsibility for this stuff?
It's a value question that council's got to answer. I know that there are dollars at the state that we could go after. On an annual basis, they have an invasive species grant program. But whether or not we would qualify is a whole nother ball of wax. City council could start allocating money on an annual basis, and we will in the public works budget to maybe look at taking care of certain areas that are publicly owned. But the private property, you're absolutely right, is the question mark that council has to look at. And so I would highly suggest the public look at, or think about that, because it could be a sidewalk conversation where 50% is covered by the city, 50% is covered by the property owner, and then the money goes a little bit longer. It could be 100% of the city, could be 100% of the resident. There's a bunch of different ways it could be kind of handled.
All right. Sounds fair. We'll keep talking about this conversation, see what happens at city council tonight. And is this something that is going to be potentially voted on tonight?
Just the survey.
Okay.
Yep,
right.
Just the survey.
Okay. And then that survey probably won't happen this year. I mean, we're getting into, they're not going to be able to do 89 miles within that period
Correct.
of time.
I believe the plan would be for the spring.
Okay. Yep. All right. Let's see. If you're just joining us, again, City Manager Mitch Foster in with us, Ludington Mayor Mark Barnett. Let's talk about housing, and that's a topic of conversation that comes up regularly. Needs to have more action taken on it because there is a ton of people that are looking for homes here. Again, having a conversation with somebody over this past weekend who said, you can't, as a single person, it's hard to be able to afford a home in this area, and they with obviously the economic development team there, they were able to prove that data and show that data. But there are some options on City Council's agenda to try to take some abandoned areas that you've talked about and see if we can convert them. I would assume that's a good idea, right?
Oh, I think it's an awesome idea. Had the opportunity this last week to attend the MML conference in Traverse City, and one of the breakout work sessions was on taking existing buildings and retrofitting them to meet some of the housing needs. And we had an opportunity to tour the Traverse City State Hospital, which is exactly what they've done, and other things. You look at the lofts on Row here in the city of Ludington. You look at some other potential projects or things that have been done in the past. And if you're a person, if the environment's important to you, and there's folks that want to reduce our carbon footprint, they released some information in this breakout session that said that taking and doing new construction or leveling old buildings and doing new construction was a much more negative impact on the environment than rehabbing old buildings, and including abatement of like asbestos and those types of things. So I think we've got a stock of buildings here in the city of Ludington that could be ripe for redevelopment and remodeling and use. So I think that's important, and we all know that it's an issue relative to affordable housing and housing in general. So
what is usually the deal breaker when it comes to this conversation? Somebody's going to say, well, we have had these abandoned buildings. Like the one I comes to mind the most is right right down there, down Harrison, right?
Yep.
Harrison, okay. And I'm like, okay, that's a building. Looks like there's nothing happening inside that building, right? Why can't this happen? Why hasn't it happened? I guess is really the question that comes to mind.
Yeah, I mean, generally it's cost. Anytime you try to take an existing structure like that and try to reconfigure it into housing, it costs a lot of money. But we're at a place right now where building new costs a ton of money as well. Right. I can tell you that the one here on South Harrison, that is one of the projects that we're looking at for a PILT, or payment in lieu of taxes. There's a potential buyer that is looking to turn it into low-income housing, as well as the house next door. So there's some good momentum out there. We've got 3 projects that are looking at that same process to go through either full or partial low-income units in there. Mm-hmm. But I'll tell you a brief story we heard from a developer. It was the Foster School redevelopment project. Those folks said that they had put out there on the interwebs, on Facebook, that they were going to be building and they were looking for people interested and to email them with interest. And they had, within the first couple of hours, they had 50 emails. Mm-hmm. Look at the issue with Live Wildwood when they had the fire in the apartment. Mm-hmm. That's 18 people or 18 units that didn't have anywhere to go. We're in a tough spot right now, and so I think from staff perspective, the city council has taken it upon themselves to do all that they can to help address this issue, whether it's through incentives like a payment in lieu of taxes or a LIHTC program for low-income units, or even changes to zoning. They're doing all that they can within their power, and that's all you can ask for.
And payment in lieu of taxes
Yep.
is part of that conversation that you're having tonight. Mm-hmm. What does that mean?
So for the longest time, in order to qualify for what they refer to as Section 42 IRS tax credits or low-income housing tax credits, which help pay for development to happen so that you can charge significantly less to make it affordable for those on the lower income spectrums, you had to approve a payment in lieu of taxes, where our downtown apartments are the perfect example. They pay 4% or 2% of the rental income on an annual basis instead of paying the full tax bill. The idea there being that the city is giving up some income for a period of time to help make that project happen, because if we charge the full tax rate, they couldn't charge what they do for rent. And so the ordinance on for tonight is actually to say we will have a general PILT or pilot ordinance dealing with payment in lieu of taxes that can be flexible for each project. And so while we will never see 2% again, that's a little low for me. 4% on an annual basis over maybe 25 years can make a big difference for a lot of these developments to keep them affordable for those at the lower income spectrums.
All right. Good information coming up there. I heard pattered feet. Do we have a dog in here or no? Is Hudson?
No,
Hudson was walking around. I think he went for a walk.
Okay, sounds good. We're just close to wrapping up, but let's talk about City Council approved Gus Macker for 2024 as part of a 3-year contract, 1 year out. Let's see what happens that first year, revisit it, and hopefully continue it. And it was a 6-1 vote in regards to that. Seems like a majority of people are excited that it will continue. In all transparency, I'm involved in that. Dr. Andrew Reamer is involved with that. We've had some of the stories. Ludington Daily News put a story out. Manistee Advocate has put a story out. This is an opportunity for us to put a little bit more information from my mouth out there, if that's okay. But from your standpoint, Mr. Mayor, you've been here for a long time. Hopefully you see this as a good tourist attractor, as an event, if done correctly, can be one of those events that the city can be proud of. Is that fair to say? Absolutely.
And I've been here long enough to know that it was never the event and never the issue of having all these people in town that said this is a reason to stop it. It was always that at what cost. So the city had a financial investment in that felt like that needed to be addressed. I think that and you know this better than I do, Chris, relative to the volunteer base. And I think the things that that the two of you have done as far as listening and putting out there that volunteer help is needed, Gus busting, those types of things. Those are all important things that, frankly, had kind of it had plateaued, and I think you're making your plan that you've put forward has been really good about how to address that and how to address the needs of the city. I think that people understand that it's just a good event, and there's a couple generation families that maybe they got introduced to Ludington that way, maybe they met their spouse that way, maybe they any one of life's events happens surrounding Macker. So it's a wonderful event, and so we're just hoping that this next year goes off really well.
And you hinted on one thing, which was the cost to the city. The city was absorbing those expenses year after year after year, which wasn't a bad thing. I mean, some cities do that kind of, as part of that partnership in the sense. And Dr. Reamer and myself, as a business entity taking it over, obviously there was the thought that, hey, you should put that in your budget rather than have the city absorb that. About $16,000 between the police and DPW, and we've decided to make that happen in the budget. But that was also part of that requirement or suggestion that led to a requirement from the city council, right?
Yeah, I also think the cooperation that the city had with the Chamber of Commerce for the 31 years was really to try to make sure that this event was successful. Right. And so at the end, it was even still those conversations about how do we start pulling back on some of the services as the event changed. And so I think it led into the conversation with you, Chris, and Dr. Reamer and Gus Macker, Scott McNeil, about, all right, what can be pulled away from the city, from Public Works, from police, that then can pull our folks back? Because as was noted in both meetings, it's been a couple decades for a lot of those folks in Public Works and police, if they are fathers, where they have been home for all day on Father's Day. Mm-hmm. And so I think a lot of those gentlemen in particular are going to be excited that they have that opportunity finally. And
I think it's important, there's always rumors that are out there, and I think it's fair to say that based on those meetings that we had with the city and the chamber and such, that it wasn't that Gus Macker wasn't financially successful. It helped with nonprofits and contributing that way. It wasn't necessarily a losing event for the Ludington area. It just became a struggle to, as you mentioned, Mr. Mayor, to find volunteers in the sense because those same groups were looked at every year. But it sometimes you get a burnout, right? That does happen from it. But we also addressed, and this is in the public record too, that there was a little bit of a ripple between Gus Macker National and the city of Ludington, and we looked at addressing that. And I think it's important for any sort of event that is a franchise event that has that brand that you want to bring, that you have that co-partnership with. And there was concerns between things that were said publicly and in the media by Gus Macker National. And at the end of the day, we, Andy Reamer and myself, looked at things as, hey, the committee locally that will be put together for Gus Macker will truly be running Gus Macker with that some advice or counsel from National. And I think that helped you a little bit in regards to helping move this forward. Is that fair to say?
Oh, absolutely. So there's really two entities as we worked with Macker for these years. I mean, you had Gus Macker, who owned the name, owned the brand, brought one of their events here, and then you had the local committee who did everything that they could do to make this a successful thing. And sometimes there was a rub relative to marketing and things that were done to make things safer and more enjoyable here locally that really I don't think that the Macker company or Macker authority was really concerned about and really didn't. So there was a little bit of conflict there. And so I think the formula that you guys have come up with, I think is really going to work well for the city of Ludington. So we're excited about 24.
We hope so. And that transparency is going to be important for you, Mitch, and for the city council to move forward in regards to the planning process and those updates. And that same thing for the community in general. When it was 1,500 teams when it was, too big for its britches, sort of the saying there, right? That was hard to manage. And so the cap is at 800 teams for 2024. Maybe we'll get there. Maybe we'll be in that 500 range again. But certainly the idea of making sure that the community is involved, the community knows, those steps going forward, and that's part of that transparent effort, so that we can revisit this next year in front of City Council and continue that contract going forward. I think it's better to have that event going forward than to screw up the first year. Mm-hmm. Fair?
Oh, absolutely fair. And I can tell you, Chris, as someone who participated in Macker when it was, 1,200 to 1,500 teams, the hecticness was with the families that visited Ludington as well, because you had so many people in town. It was like 4th of July times 2 over an entire weekend. It was a lot. And I can't imagine from parent standpoint, as a kid then, I was probably a part of the problem. But now at 800 teams or 500 teams between those numbers, I think it's a manageable event for our community. It doesn't overwhelm services. It doesn't overwhelm our restaurants as often as they already are overwhelmed at times. So no, it'll be good.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the final things to address this morning, Manistee was in conversation for potentially Gus Macker, and there's always been the rivalry in the sports and other activities and such. And so hopefully that irons itself out. There was that rumor that when Manistee or when Ludington made the decision to end Gus Macker, that we came on board because we didn't want Manistee to have it. No, that wasn't the case. And truly it was messages that come in, and we actually took a screenshot and gave it to the newspaper up there, that it was an individual in particular that triggered us to say, hey, you know what, let's do this. And this was on June 20th, so shortly after that announcement, that hey, let's start that conversation with keeping Macker here. But Ludington has had Macker for the last 31 years. It just seems like it's a perfect spot. People say that register for Macker, the Lake Michigan in the background, the accessibility, and it truly is kind of that perfect spot that it should remain.
It's interesting. Ludington has been the flagship for Macker in terms of the events going on around the state, around the country. And so you're coming up with this plan and implementing this, taking a fresh look at some of the issues helps. In my mind, 24 is going to continue to be the flagship Macker event. And so I appreciate you, appreciate Dr. Reamer and all the work that those that are working with you have put into it and continue to put into it. I think we'll continue to kind of hold that title, as it were.
All right. Well, looking forward to future updates, and we appreciate the two of you talking about this and discussing it, and hopefully we'll meet your expectations as we move forward, and obviously making sure that there's a transparent effort will ensure that the community's expectations are met as well. I think we covered everything that we wanted to talk about. It's a long segment, and I appreciate the two of you coming in and chatting with us. 6 o'clock, mm-hmm. City Council meeting tonight. Anything that you want to add before we wrap up? Are you good to go?
See you there.
All right, same thing.
I do have one thing I wanted to note.
Okay.
So as a part of, we've got a ton of big projects starting to happen, with the Andes project, Laura Street or the North Shore Apartments. We've got a new portion of our website that's the project update page that people can go on, take a look at the updates we are getting from these properties and these projects, as well as whenever we have public projects. So we'll have that, and then you can be part of the email subscription where it gets pumped out to you. But it'll be an easy place where if, hey, I'm wondering where the Andes project's at right now, you can go on there and see the updates we get from the contractor. So I wanted to push that.
All right, sounds great. Looking forward to that restaurant too downtown. It just looks great. And that construction on that corner, that the road closure side of it, that'll probably be, till the end of next year, right? Is that
Yes.
Is that
Okay. I would guess probably late fall, probably a year from now.
all right?
Yep.
9:13 now here on 102.7 WMOM and Hot Country Hits 99.9. If you missed any of this segment with the Mayor of Ludington, Mark Barnett, or City Manager Mitch Foster, you can watch it on our Facebook page or our YouTube channel. And as always, if you have a question for something that you want discussed in the future, let us know. We'll be glad to discuss it right here on 102.7 WMOM and